Ujin. I was born in Korea, kind of been all over the place since. I work in music technology. I kind of do a bunch of different things. Life is never really boring. That's how I like to keep it. For the past couple years, I've been working in film and music out in Los Angeles. I work at Output. We create and design sound software for like film composers, producers, DJs, musicians of really any nature. Right now we're actually in our studio. We bring in different musicians depending on what instrument that we're creating, and we record them, we take the sounds and manipulate them within the software that we have and create libraries, you could say, for other musicians to kind of use the sounds that we're making out. So I work as part of the marketing team. Right now I'm kind of learning a lot about music production, as well as like digital advertising. A lot of my role is actually doing a lot of content production. We are a startup. We started about 3 years ago. And so in terms of really understanding what our brand voice is and what it is that we're creating and the people that we really want to talk to, all of those different questions are what I kind of do on the marketing side. With Output, there are a bunch of different bodies. We have sound designers, who are the ones that mainly kind of exist in the studio. We have developers, so they create the software. And then the last part is marketing. So we pretty much take everything that we're making and deliver it to the right people. Yeah, so I went to school as an undecided major. One of the best things that I do is I don't make decisions. I hate making those. So I kind of went to school knowing that I had a lot of different interests, whether it was going to the film program or the medical program. I think most Koreans know that you have to choose one path, and usually your parents tell you it's being a doctor or doing something very technically based. For me, I definitely grew up in that environment as well, but one of the things I do is not follow rules, and kind of went in. I had a lot of different interests. I learned how to deliver a baby. That's when I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I was like, I can't do this every day. After that, I went into international studies. I kind of was really interested in a lot of different fields, but I ended up in business. I think it just applies to most things, so it worked out for the best. Even when I was a makeup artist, I had absolutely no idea other than the fact that I loved what beauty meant to me. But the first job that I ever got was assisting an artist out in LA, where we got together because of the fact that I had a business background. He was doing a startup business, and I helped him on the marketing end while he showed me the world that he was in as an artist. So in a lot of ways, as you said, like there's no real mistakes that you make. I think the biggest thing that stops you from being creative or what stops you from doing what it is that you want is the fear that you're doing something wrong. And for me, I feel like I'm always doing something wrong. So that really is what propelled me to be able to just do whatever it is that was in front of me and do it to the best of your ability, because that is the moment that you're living in. You're there for a reason. So when I went to business school, it was against my nature. I was in a classroom full of people that thought you had to act in a formulaic way or else it didn't work. So that was very, very important for me, because you have to know that that's how other people think and that's their worldview, so that when you try to develop what it is that you want, whether it's as an artist or whether it's as an entrepreneur, in whatever form, you have to know how other people think and what they're feeling. And so I do not have a single regret, even if my past is riddled with different failures and moments that were a bit more painful than they were anything else. For sure. I absolutely am an advocate that every single person should have an education, whether or not it's in college or not. That allowed me to have the time and space to ask questions that I couldn't ask myself. I needed peers, I needed professors, I needed to be in a funnel where I wasn't just by myself in my own mind. And I think that's incredibly important for young people to have, because you exist, starting from when you're a kid, you're told how it is to live. Your parents teach you how to eat. Everything is somewhat structured for you, but when you go to college, it's the time when you exist in a structure, but you build out your flow. And I think that was incredibly important for me, because I was flowing in so many different directions. I needed an environment where I could find my unique space. So I absolutely think education is crucial to development. I don't necessarily think the way that our modern system is set up is the most fruitful. I think it's a lot more difficult for young people to explore what pulls them. But I think it's absolutely necessary to find yourself in that kind of environment. Yeah, so my parents definitely wanted me to do something that I was happy doing. Because they knew that I was happy doing a lot of different things, they wanted me to really decide on one thing that it is that I could really develop in and give it my all. That was really hard, because I went into school not necessarily knowing what it is that I wanted to do. Every day, pretty much, like ever since I started my first year of college, they were asking what I was doing and how that was going to really benefit me in the future. The way that I live my life, I don't necessarily think of the future most of the time. So there was a lot of conflict on those terms, but something that I've been very blessed to grow up with is the fact that my parents have given me kind of free will to choose what it is that makes me happy. While I was going to school and not necessarily going to class, I was putting on a lot of shows. I was working with a lot of different organizations, making tamales on the weekends, a bunch of different things that didn't necessarily bode well with my parents. They didn't know why I was doing all of these things and why I was interested. But I think that really gave me the right lens on really deciding what it is that I love to do. And that is being a part of a creative community, that is discovering things that I didn't necessarily know existed. So that is something that's very different from the way that my parents grew up. And that constantly is a point of tension. But I think now, since I am a bit older and I have just been doing the things that make me feel alive, I think they've allowed me to kind of go on about doing what that is. I think disadvantages is a weird approach for me, because growing up as a Korean American is everything that I know. So what I have come to know and become aware of is that there are certain limitations to what or who it is that you are fitting into a larger picture of things. So growing up, moving around all the time, that was tough for me, in the sense that, one, I had to learn a new language when I was just learning what one was. My parents, they didn't necessarily have a network of friends in the town that we lived in all the time, because we were constantly moving. All of those different things, I think, have led to my own like Korean American misfit identity. And so for me to think of certain things that have been somewhat painful for me as a disadvantage is what actually strengthened my sense of who it is that I am and where it is that I came from. Yes, it was tough figuring out what it is that I wanted to do because I was getting new friends every round, learning a new language all the time, existing in a whole nother world where I had to learn a new set of rules. But I think that it's very characteristic of what the Korean American identity is that we are fluid. We love differences. For example, if you look at our food, some of the Korean fusion food is some of the best out there. No one does fusion like Koreans do because what we do is we love cherry picking from the best of all of these different cultures. And I think that even if it's tough because we don't have a clear sense of what that is, and all of these other traditional ways of what the Korean identity is, where you have to have a strong education, you have to get married as a young woman, you have to look a certain way, all of these different things that we're battling against is what triggers inside of me that I don't think in that way, or that is not necessarily what I believe is advantageous to progressing in my own sense. So I think all of the disadvantages that we find, whether it is our, especially as makeup artists, I think you work in such a superficial world where what you do is making somebody beautiful. It is all on the surface, but as a Korean American, that is what led me into loving that. I loved beauty. I loved the way that you can make yourself feel different from the way that you look different. Was it hard to really go into the industry where you don't work with any Koreans, you don't work with any Asian faces? Yes, because that is not the way that I learned what beauty was. Because for me, I looked at myself in the mirror, I looked at my family, I looked at my friends who look differently from who is in mainstream media. But is that a disadvantage? No. I think that is what taught me what it is that is beautiful in my own mind that I want to see is beautiful in other people's minds. So yes, there are certain things that should not be the way that they are, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be the way that it is. So that's kind of how I look at my own background and really changing the way that I really understand my own culture and my own background. Happy moments. I think I really try to live every day where I'm having fun. One of my favorite ideas from David Bowie, who's one of my biggest inspirations, he says, I don't know necessarily where I'm going, but I know it's not going to be boring. So that's really how I look at being happy, or the moments that I am able to access that type of feeling, is when I know that something is something I've never seen before. Whether it's like a moment of discovery, whether it's something that someone told you that you've never heard before, or a sound you've never heard before, that's when I'm the happiest, when something it's not necessarily known. And part of, I think, knowing happiness and when you are happy is knowing the other side of it. Because if you're in a constant state of being in joy, then you're not being realistic, you're not living in the moment. And I think that is how I look at happiness, is the fact that when you're happy in the moments that give you that type of joy or bliss, it exists because you know things other than that. You know what pain is, you know what anger is, you know all of these different things that give you the ability to differentiate what it means to be happy. And when you feel a deeper joy is when you're coming out of something that you're able to access that feeling. For example, I was working a startup job when I just graduated college, and that to me gave me a lot of happiness from the fact that I got to dictate what it is that I wanted to see in the world. The way that I acted, whatever it is that I was creating a campaign on was based off of my ideas, and that gave me more happiness than a six-figure salary would. Very different from the people I graduated with, where they went to accounting companies and consulting jobs and all of that. But when I decided to leave that first job is when I was the most depressed in my life. And I think you go through highs and lows, you go through different mountains and valleys in your life because that is the path that you are walking to understand what it means to pursue what happiness is. So that's how I look at happy moments, is the fact that it's a constant ride. I can't pinpoint certain moments that I get that, but if I could say what is the one moment that I do, it's always when I see something or I feel something that's very different from what it is that I knew before. Like, I think, as I said, like, happiness is a very fickle thing. I think, like fame and like a lot of other things, it's very fleeting. And that's the very nature of what happiness is. One of the most important things about happiness is understanding that it is not how you feel, it's not how you think, it's what you do. It's the actions that you really choose that determine whether it is that you're happy. So, am I happy? Yes, because I'm doing things that wake me up in the morning and I feel really happy to be able to do so. Most definitely. I don't think I would wake up if I didn't have that. I love sleeping too much, but most definitely, especially since it's the beginning of the year, I'm thinking about a lot of different desires that I've had, that now it's the time to stop thinking. I have always been a writer. I've written poetry just when I can't sleep at night. All of those different things I just do, just that kind of inspires me. But now I think if I could pinpoint what I want to do in the direct future, it's to write my first short film and direct it. I want to create my first track. Kind of combine that with my poetry as well. So in a lot of ways, there's little goals that I have set out in terms of things that I've always wanted to try and screw up, you know, because you always do that in the beginning. But other than that, I think just bringing it down to another place is giving myself more time, where I'm not constantly moving. I think you need to ground yourself in moments to find what it is that you not only want to try, but do. So I think that's really the place I'm in. Other than making music and making films, it's to really set my direction straight, try really working on a single project and letting that come out in whatever way that it can, and not taking flight as I always try to do. Like, I've always thought of myself as like a chameleon. I don't do anything exceptionally well. That's my problem. But I could do a lot of little weird things. But if I could say there's one thing that no matter what I'll do is, I think this is something that Picasso said, and he was saying that you have to learn the rules first before you learn how to break them. What I love to do is break rules. I don't necessarily listen to what rules are in place, but, and that's definitely something that I'm developing, but my very nature of what I've always done, whether it is playing handball with my friends when I was in like middle school to working on a campaign with my company, is listening to what's going on, and you have to be able to do that, but also knowing that things exist out of what other people know. And that's what I always strive for, is think differently, because really at the end of the day, I am very different. And just accepting that that is the way that my brain works, and that is what is valuable, and that is what's special about me, is that I don't think in the same vein as a lot of others do. I think the most important thing is to love yourself. That's one of the most difficult loves. Is you could love your friend, you could love your family, and even that is difficult. But to love yourself in a way where, as a young artist or as a young student or whatever place that you're in, you are an amateur. You won't know what it is that you're doing, and that's fine, because when you accept the fact that you don't know what you're doing is when you could start asking the questions and learning from the place that you're in. So I think if I could say what's the most important thing is to just accept where it is that you are and simply be, and love yourself for being in that place, even if it's tough, because you have so much time. If anything, you have that. So give yourself the space, because if you look at time in a way where you get older and you should be smarter, you should be stronger, you should be richer, all of those different things don't matter, because if you don't accept where you are, then you can't go where you want to go. So I think that's the most important thing, is to not look at the way that other people think of you. It's to look at yourself as you are and really love who that is. One of my favorite writers is Maya Angelou. One thing is watch her documentary, and Still I Rise. Changed my life, amazing. But one of her ideas that I really want to share that has given me a lot of strength is have courage to trust love and do it one more time. Because you go through so many failures and successes, whatever those mean in your life, that make you lose a sense of faith, whether it's in a people, it's in a friend, whether it's in yourself. But for you to keep on going, you have to have the courage to trust that love is for you and that it's for everyone else. And I think this world needs more of it. I think we need more trust. We need more love. And that can only come internally, from the inside of you out. So if I could say anything, it's just trust yourself, love yourself, and life will be good.